You're listening to Dark Leaves Whisper, where forgotten voices echo through shadowed forests, and spirits remember what the living forget. Tonight, July 13, the veil thins once more in the heart of the old mountains, where silence holds stories and the wind still carries the names of the dead. We return. Before we begin, thank you to those who've already subscribed to the channel. Your support keeps the whispers alive. And if you haven't yet, subscribe now and tap the bell so the spirits never visit without warning. Gather close, light your incense, protect your spirit, because not all whispers are meant to be heard. Story number 1. She walked backwards. The night the forest watched us, I never believed in ghosts. Not because I thought I was smarter than people who did, but because I needed the world to make sense. I needed there to be a reason for things, a logic. But that night in the woods, when she turned around and smiled at me, I realized how wrong I was. It started as a spontaneous trip. My cousin Ning and I had been working nonstop. 2 months straight of overtime, double shifts, barely any sleep. We both lived in Fresno, but he had found this Airbnb up in the Sierra foothills near Bass Lake. He called it a place to reset. The pictures were beautiful. A small cabin tucked deep into the trees, old wooden deck out front, no neighbors for miles. I should have known it was too good to be true. The first night was quiet, peaceful even. We drank beers on the porch, listened to the wind shift through the tall pines, joke about quitting our jobs and disappearing into the forest. But something about the silence. It wasn't natural. It wasn't the kind of quiet you find in peaceful places. It was the kind that waits. You don't notice it until your ears start ringing. Like the world is holding its breath, listening. We went hiking the next day. There was an old trail that twisted behind the cabin, supposedly leading to a dried up creek bed and an abandoned ranger tower. About an hour in, we found it. The tower was just a skeleton of its former self. Half rotted wood, metal rusted orange, stairs that groaned when you stepped on them. The forest swallowed everything around it, and that's when I saw her. She was standing on the path ahead, maybe 30 or 40 feet away. A girl, thin, long, black hair covering her face, wearing what looked like an old, faded white blouse and a long skirt. She was barefoot. But what froze my blood, what made every part of me scream without a sound, was the way she moved. She was walking backwards, slow, deliberate steps. Her arms hung stiff at her sides. She didn't look behind her. She didn't check the path. She just knew where to step, and somehow she was headed straight for us. Ning grabbed my arm hard. "Don't say anything," he whispered. "Just turn around, slowly." I did as he said. We walked fast but quiet, back down the path. The trees creaked above us. The air felt thick like soup, and every few steps I swore I could hear her. Bare feet against the leaves, still walking backward, still following. Back at the cabin, we slammed the door shut and didn't speak for hours. Eventually, I asked, "Did you see her face?" Ning shook his head, slowly. "Number, and you're lucky you didn't." That night, I dreamed of her. Only it didn't feel like a dream. I was standing in the forest again, and she was there, walking backward in a slow circle around me. I couldn't move, couldn't blink, couldn't breathe. She began to hum, a dry, broken sound like someone whistling through cracked lips, and then she turned. Not all the way, just her head. Her body stayed facing away, but her neck twisted, vertebrae popping one by one, until her face was looking directly at me, and she smiled. A slow, wide grin that split her lips like a rip in old fabric. I woke up gasping, drenched in sweat. There were footprints in the hallway. Wet, muddy footprints. Bare footprints, leading from the front door to the edge of my bed. Nang didn't sleep at all that night. He sat on the couch with a knife in one hand and a flashlight in the other, eyes wide and unblinking. "Why didn't we leave?" I asked. He didn't answer. He just muttered, "If she finds out you saw her, she follows." The next morning we left. Didn't even pack. Just drove. No music, no talking, just silence and the occasional glance in the rearview mirror. I didn't see her, but I felt her, like the trees watched us leave, like the road stretched longer than it should have, and just before we made it back to town, my phone buzzed. New photo save. I hadn't taken any pictures. I opened it. It was a shot of me and Ning walking on the trail from behind, and there, between us, was a blurry figure, walking backward. The days that followed blurred into one long stretch of exhaustion and fear. I kept seeing her, not just in the mirror or at night, in broad daylight. I'd be driving through a grocery store parking lot and glimpse a pale figure slipping between the rows of cars. I'd walk past reflective windows and catch her standing behind me, even though no one was there when I turned around. It wasn't sleep deprivation. It wasn't anxiety. I knew she was there. She was following me. Worse, I started to hear her when other people talked. I'd be on the phone with my mom, trying to sound normal, trying not to let the shakiness creep into my voice. But in the gaps between her words, I hear something else. The rasp of dry breath, like wind blowing through dead leaves, then a whisper. That same voice over and over, slipping through the static. "You shouldn't have looked." Ning stopped replying to my messages. I went to his apartment. It was locked from the inside. The landlord let me in, thinking he might be hurt. The place was wrong. It wasn't trashed, no signs of a struggle. But it felt hollow, like the walls were listening, like the air itself was waiting for something to happen. I found Ning's phone on a table, still open to his last text draft. "If you see her again, don't run. Don't scream. Just lie down. She'll take you faster that way." There was no sign of him. No clothes missing. No car gone. Nothing. He had vanished, like fog burning off under sunlight. Only he didn't take his shadow with him. I stayed up that night, watching the wall shift in the low light of my bedroom. I thought if I didn't sleep, she couldn't take me. That maybe she only lived in dreams. But around 3 a.m., I blinked, just once. And suddenly, I was there. Not in my room, not on my bed. I was in the forest, standing in the middle of that dirt road. Fog coiled around my legs like smoke. The trees stood like broken statues, bark blistered, dead branches hanging low like crooked arms. And there, down the path, she waited. But something was different. She wasn't walking away anymore. She was standing still, facing me. Her face was blank now, no grin, just hollow sadness, and she spoke. "Why did you see me?" Her voice didn't come through her mouth. It came from the trees, the wind, the earth itself. I tried to answer, but I couldn't move. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. She lifted one arm and pointed at me. Then her mouth opened, wider and wider, until it split down the sides like tearing paper. Darkness poured out, and I fell. When I woke, I was lying on the floor beside my bed, gasping for breath, drenched in cold sweat. My phone buzzed, a voicemail from an unknown number. I played it on speaker, hands trembling. At first, just static, then a voice. You shouldn't have looked. Then another voice layered beneath it, faint, hoarse, neighing. She comes through the things you carry: paper, screens, eyes, then silence. I dropped the phone. It buzzed again. New photo saved. I opened my gallery. There was a picture I hadn't taken. It showed me sleeping in my bed last night, but standing at the foot of my bed, she was there, head bowed, hands pressed to her face like she was weeping. The next morning, I packed everything, burned my sketchbook, smashed my phone, drove without stopping until I hit the coast. I changed numbers, changed names, told myself it was over, but it isn't, because some nights I still feel her near. When the wind's too still, when the night's too quiet, I swear I hear it. The soft scrape of bare feet on tile. Sometimes backward, sometimes not. She's patient. She doesn't need to chase. She waits. Because the moment you see her, she sees you. Story 2, The Ghost Girl of Highway 70. We have been planning the trip to Orville's Hmong New Year celebration for weeks. It was a chance to reconnect. Old friends, old traditions. The air was crisp as we piled into the car that evening, laughter bouncing off the walls like the bass from the radio. The road ahead seemed endless, winding through hills and forests that whispered secret in the dark. I was behind the wheel, my hands gripping it a little tighter than usual. The others were quiet, save for the occasional joke or song lyric tossed around. As we drove deeper into the night, the familiar comfort of the road began to fade. The trees grew thicker, their shadows stretching across the pavement like long fingers. The streetlights disappeared, swallowed by darkness. Somewhere, the radio cut out completely, leaving only the hum of the engine and the crackling static of the night. We had taken this route before, countless times, but tonight the highway felt different, like a thread unraveling beneath us, pulling us towards something unknown. We'd been driving for hours under a sky thick with stars when I saw her, just standing there on the side of Highway 70, like she was waiting for something. She looked like any other teenager, jeans ripped at the knees, a simple hoodie pulled tight around her neck, and worn out sneakers covered in dust from the roadside. Her long black hair was loose, tumbling over her shoulders and catching the faint glow from the car's headlights. But damn, she was beautiful. Not flashy, but real. Her eyes were bright and clear, framed by thick lashes, and her smile was soft, like she was shy but hopeful. Her skin had that smooth, warm glow you see on someone who spends just enough time outside to catch a tan, but not too much to look worn. She had that perfect mix of innocent and quiet strength, the kind that made you think maybe the universe was smiling down on you that night. My friends and I shared a look, the kind that said, "Is this really happening?" We figured she must be headed to town, maybe stranded or lost. It felt like a lucky break, a moment to do the right thing, and maybe even catch a little good karma. "Let's give her a ride," one said. "Yeah, she looks like she needs help," I added. I slowed down, pulling over to the shoulder. The gravel crunched beneath her boots as she stepped up to the car, sliding open the back door without hesitation. She didn't say much, just nodded a quiet thanks. But even in that silence, there was something about her. Something that didn't quite fit. Like she belonged somewhere else. Or maybe nowhere at all. She sat quietly in the back seat, pulling her hoodie tighter around her shoulders, like the night had already started to get under her skin. The car smelled faintly of old leather and pine air freshener, but beneath that, I caught a strange, sharp scent, like crushed mint leaves mixed with something metallic, cold and biting. It was subtle, but it made the back of my neck tingle, like something was watching us. The radio crackled softly, playing a station that was mostly static. Every now and then, a snippet of music or chatter would cut through, but the signal kept fading in and out. My friends joked about the haunted highway as if that would make the night less tense. "She's so quiet," one whispered. "Maybe she's tired or scared," I said, glancing in the rearview mirror. Her eyes were fixed on the window, reflecting the dark trees that rushed past. But sometimes, just for a second, I thought I saw her looking right at me. The road stretched long and empty ahead. The headlights caught glimpses of thick woods on either side, branches reaching out like fingers. The moon was a thin sliver, barely lighting our way. "Do you think she's okay?" one of my friends finally asked. Before I could answer, a sudden chill swept through the car. My breath fogged up the window for a moment, even though the heater was cranked all the way. The girl didn't react. She just whispered something so soft I almost missed it. "Not everyone gets to go home." The words hung in the air, heavy and cold. I blinked and turned to look, but she was staring straight ahead again, calm, distant, like she was somewhere else entirely. Then the radio burst into static, louder and more urgent, as if warning us. "Hey, are you—" The car jerked hard, the tires slipping on the slick pavement. I fought the wheel, heart pounding, but the world spun. The trees blurred into a wall of darkness, and then everything went black. The world spun violently, twisting and shattering around me. The screech of tires against wet asphalt filled my ears, mingling with the pounding of my own heartbeat. Glass exploded in 1,000 shards, sparkling like deadly stars against the night. For a moment, everything froze. Then the car slammed into the ditch with a deafening crash. Airbags blasted open, filling the cabin with a harsh, powdery haze that stung my throat. The smell of burnt rubber and smoke clawed at my nose. I coughed, trying to steady my breath. The girl was silent, unmoving. I turned my head, heart hammering. But the back seat was empty. A cold wave of dread slammed into me. I reached back, searching the empty space where she'd been moments ago. No sign, nothing. "Guys," I called out, voice shaking. "Where are you?" Only silence answered. I struggled to unbuckle my seatbelt, fingers fumbling against the cold metal. Pain stabbed in my side, but I ignored it. The car was precariously tilted, and the night outside was thick with shadows. I climbed out, breath forming clouds in the cold air. The trees loomed nearby, silent witnesses to the chaos. The highway was deserted. No other cars, no lights, nothing but the sound of my ragged breathing. Then, from the darkness, a whisper, soft, almost a sigh. "Not everyone gets to go home." Pain sliced through my skull in sharp, relentless bursts, each pulse a hammer driving deeper into my mind. The world around me swayed, blurring and snapping into focus, a cruel game of light and shadow. I stumbled forward, every step unsteady, my breath ragged in the cold night air. Through the haze of dizziness and throbbing headache, I caught sight of her. A pale, flickering figure gliding between the twisted trees. Moonlight spilled down like a spotlight, catching her in brief, haunting clarity before she melted back into the darkness. Her clothes looked ordinary, a hoodie and jeans, but there was something otherworldly in the way she moved, silent, as the mist curling around the trunks. I blinked hard, the edges of my vision swimming. Was she really there, or just a trick of my battered mind? Her eyes seemed fixed on me, calm but piercing, as if she knew things I couldn't understand. "Hey!" My voice cracked, ragged and desperate. "Where is everyone? What happened? Where are my friends?" The only answer was the rustling of dry leaves and the cold whisper of wind through the branches. Then I heard it. Her voice, soft and eerie, carried like a ghost sigh through the trees. "Not everyone gets to go home." My heart slammed against my ribs. The words echoed inside my head, warping reality. Pain twisted my stomach, and I gripped my head, fighting the dizziness that threatened to pull me under. The forest seemed to shift and pulse, the shadows thickening, closing in like fingers reaching out to snatch me away. I forced myself to look again. A flash of white between the trees. There she was, stepping lightly, her face briefly illuminated by the moon's cold light. Her gaze met mine, vacant but knowing, and then she vanished like smoke. I shouted again, voice cracking into a broken scream. "Where are you? Where is everyone?" Only silence answered, and then the chilling whisper so close I felt it brush my ear. "Not everyone gets to go home." Panic clawed at my chest as the forest seemed to close in tighter, the shadows alive and watching. My mind spun, caught between nightmare and reality, desperate to find a way back, but knowing deep down that some paths lead nowhere. The cold seeped into my bones as I stood frozen on the edge of the forest. Every breath I took came out ragged and visible in the pale moonlight. The wrecked car behind me was a crumpled shadow, silent now except for the soft drip of leaking fluid. I called out again, voice cracking with desperation. No response. The trees around me whispered in the night breeze, their branches scraping like dry bones. My eyes darted through the darkness, searching for any sign of my friends, or even the girl. But all I found were shifting shadows and the creeping silence. Then I caught movement, a faint flicker of white just beyond the tree line. My heart leapt, hope flooding me, but as I stepped forward, the figure slipped away like smoke, elusive and untouchable. The eerie phrase echoed again, this time from the very air around me. "Not everyone gets to go home." My chest tightened, panic rising like a storm. The world felt unreal, as if I stepped into a nightmare from which there was no waking. The pain in my head throbbed, dizziness swirling with fear. I sank to the ground, back against a cold tree trunk, struggling to steady my breath. The night stretched endlessly, filled with whispering shadows and that haunting voice, and I knew I was truly alone. I couldn't stay still any longer. Clenching my jaw against the pounding in my head, I forced myself up and stumbled back toward the wreck, hoping to find my friends, or at least some sign of them. The cold night air bit into my skin, and the silence around me was thick, too thick, like the forest itself was holding its breath. Then I saw it, a twisted shape lying just beyond the roadside, half hidden in the underbrush. My heart stopped. It was him. His face was pale and still, eyes wide open, staring blankly at the starless sky. Blood stained his shirt and the earth beneath him. The scent of something metallic filled the air, sharp and sickening. I dropped to my knees, shaking him, desperate for any sign of life, but his body was cold, lifeless. "No," I whispered, voice breaking. Panic surged, and I scrambled back to the car, shouting for the others, but the silence swallowed my words. The girl's haunting whisper floated on the wind again, chilling me to my core. Not everyone gets to go home. I realized then that this was no ordinary accident. Something dark and terrible was stalking us. My breath came in ragged gasps as I paced the edge of the forest. The image of my fallen friend burned into my mind. Every shadow seemed to move. Every sound stretched into something sinister. I called out again and again, my voice cracking with desperation. Suddenly, a movement caught my eye. A flicker of something pale stepping between the trees. My heart jumped. It was her again, the girl. "Where are you?" I yelled, stumbling forward, pain stabbing my side with every step. She didn't answer, but vanished like a wisp of smoke. Then, from behind me, a scream. Sharp, terrified. I spun around, heart pounding. The second friend's face appeared briefly through the darkness, eyes wide with horror. Before I could reach him, he disappeared, swallowed by the forest as if the shadows had claimed him. The silence that followed was suffocating. And through it all, that chilling voice whispered once more, "Not everyone gets to go home." I was alone now, trapped in a nightmare I couldn't escape. Every nerve in my body screamed to run, but my legs felt like lead. The forest around me twisted into shapes I couldn't trust, every shadow a threat. I heard her voice again, soft, cruel, echoing from all directions. "Not everyone gets to go home." I forced myself to move, each step dragging me deeper into the night. The cold bit at my skin, but the real chill came from the knowledge that the girl was still out there, hunting, waiting. I shouted for my friends, but only silence answered. Then I saw her, clearer than ever, standing beneath the pale moonlight. Her eyes met mine, empty, endless. I stumbled backward, heart pounding. I wasn't ready. None of us were. The last thing I remember was the cold touch, like fingers made of ice, reaching out to pull me into the darkness. Somewhere between the trees and the wreckage, I blacked out. When I came to, a bystander was shaking me awake, shouting for help. The flashing red and blue lights soon filled the dark highway, and the paramedics took over. The police called it a freak accident. Too much drinking, maybe some weed mixed in. They said my story was confused, that my head injury was playing tricks on me. But I know the truth. I wasn't drunk. I wasn't high. What I saw, what I felt, was real. The stretch of Highway 70 still holds its secrets. On quiet nights, when the moon hangs low, some say you can see her, the girl in the hoodie and jeans, walking silently along the roadside, waiting. She whispers the same chilling words to anyone who will listen. Not everyone gets to go home. The road remembers, and it waits. Story 3. The Shadow in the Valley. I stepped off the old bus and immediately felt the difference. The valley stretched out before me, just as I remembered from years ago. Green hills rolling gently, a river winding through the fields, and the small cluster of wooden houses that made up my village. But something felt wrong. The lively sounds I expected were missing. Instead, there was a heavy silence hanging in the air, like the whole place was holding its breath. My little brother Cal ran ahead, laughing as he kicked a bright red ball down the cracked dirt road. "Wait for me, Cal!" I called, trying to catch up with him. His carefree energy was a balm to the unease tightening in my chest. Our uncle, Chue, stood outside his house, watching us with a worried expression. His face was lined with age, but his eyes were sharp and tired. When I reached him, he pulled me aside. "You shouldn't wander near the forest at night," he said quietly. "It's not safe anymore." I frowned. I've heard the whispers about shadows moving through the trees and people disappearing. I need to understand what's really happening. Trey hesitated, then said, "The villagers say it's the restless spirit of a woman who vanished decades ago. They fear it." I looked toward the thick forest at the village's edge, the dark trees standing silent and still. "I'm not afraid. I want to help." He shook his head slowly. "Be careful, Lena. Some shadows are best left alone." That night, I couldn't sleep. The village lay silent under a full moon, the pale light casting long shadows across the fields. I sat by my window, staring out at the dark forest. Suddenly, a soft thud broke the stillness. Heart pounding, I ran outside. Near the edge of the trees, I found Cal's red ball, but no sign of him. "Cal!" I shouted into the night, my voice trembling. The villagers gathered, their faces pale and anxious. "We'll search at first light," Uncle Chue said firmly. "Tonight, rest." But I couldn't rest. I felt eyes on me from the shadows, chills running down my spine. The forest seemed alive, whispering my name. Days passed with no sign of Cal. Search parties combed the woods and riverbanks, but found nothing. Sometimes people whispered about a shadow glimpsed just beyond sight, a dark figure slipping silently between the trees. At night, I dreamed of the shadow. A woman cloaked in darkness, eyes full of sadness. I woke with tears. A heavy sadness settled deep inside me. One afternoon, I sat by the river with Uncle Chew. The water sparkled under the sun, and the wind rustled through the reeds. "I think the shadow is connected to Cal's disappearance," I said softly. Troy nodded. "It's the spirit of Mai, a young woman who disappeared here long ago. No one knows what happened." "Do you think she's dangerous?" I asked. "No," he said slowly. "She's lost, angry and lonely. The villagers fear her, but she just wants to be remembered." I clenched my fists. "Then I'll help her find peace." The next morning, the village was tense, like it was holding its breath, waiting for some terrible news. I joined the search party as we moved toward the edge of the forest. The trees stood tall and silent, their leaves barely stirring in the cool morning air. Every crack of a twig beneath my feet felt loud, almost threatening. "Cow!" I called out again and again. The only answer was the whisper of the wind and the distant call of birds. I stopped for a moment, trying to steady my breathing. Something about the woods was different. The air was heavier, colder than it should be in the morning sun. I glanced around nervously. My skin prickled, like invisible eyes were watching me. Suddenly I caught movement, a flicker of shadow darting between the trunks, too fast for me to see clearly. My heart jumped, and I squinted into the dark spaces between the trees, but there was nothing there. "Did you see that?" I asked one of the men searching nearby. He shook his head. "Probably just a deer." But I knew better. It wasn't an animal. It was something else. Something not quite alive. That night, I sat alone by the fire, trying to calm the storm inside me. The village had grown quieter since Cal vanished. People whispered behind closed doors, and parents kept their children close. I stared into the flames, feeling the weight of my fear and helplessness pressing down on me. Then, from the shadows at the edge of the firelight, I felt a presence, cold, quiet, watching. "Who's there?" I whispered. No answer, but I saw it then, a pale figure just beyond the firelight. A woman, her face soft but sad, eyes deep pools of loneliness. She was beautiful and fragile, like a forgotten memory. I blinked, and she was gone. The dreams came again that night. The woman appeared, standing in a field of tall grass, wind tugging at her hair. She reached out to me, her voice barely a whisper. "Help me," she said. I woke with tears on my cheeks. I didn't know her name yet, but I felt her pain as if it were my own. Over the next days, I found myself drawn deeper into the mystery. I talked to the elders, piecing together fragments of my story, a young woman who disappeared without a trace, whose grief and sorrow had never found rest. One afternoon, I sat again by the river with Uncle Chu. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the water. "How do I help her find peace?" I asked. Choi looked at me with tired eyes. "You must listen to her story. Understand what she lost. Sometimes the living must carry the burden of the forgotten." I nodded, feeling the weight of the task settling on my shoulders. That evening, I returned to the forest alone, armed only with a small lantern and my determination. The trees whispered secret in the dark, and my footsteps echoed on the leaf-strewn path. "Mai," I called softly, "I'm here to listen." For a long moment, nothing answered but the wind. Then, a cold breath brushed my neck, and I felt the presence again. This time, closer, almost tangible. "Please," a voice whispered, "help me find my way home." I swallowed my fear and whispered back, "I will." The next night, I went back to the edge of the forest, where I had first seen her. The moonlight filtered through the trees like a faded memory, lighting my path in silver. I brought nothing with me except a blanket, a flashlight, and the old journal I'd borrowed from Uncle Chu, a collection of notes, rumors, and hand-drawn maps from when villagers first started talking about the Shadow Woman. I sat on the damp earth and waited. "Mai," I whispered again, "I know you're near. Please. I need to know what happened to my brother. I need to understand you." The air around me chilled, and the shadows seemed to ripple. Then, she was there. Not like before, not half hidden in the dark, or just outside my vision. This time, she stood only a few feet away, her long black hair moving gently in a wind I couldn't feel. Her eyes, they weren't threatening. They were hollow, wounded, lost. I didn't move. "I didn't leave," she said softly. "They thought I ran away. But I never left." I swallowed hard. "What do you mean?" "They buried me with silence. They covered me with fear. But I'm still here." She turned away, her form fading like smoke. But her voice stayed with me. "You must see where it began." The next day, I searched through the abandoned parts of the village, places no one dared to go anymore. There was a shack behind the rice mill, barely standing. I pushed open the creaking door and found old bedding, rotting wood, and a faint smell of something that had long died. On one wall, there were carvings, letters, a name scratched over and over again, "May." I knelt beside them, running my fingers across the marks. This was where she stayed, or where she'd been kept. Suddenly, I felt it. A rush of grief so intense I had to sit down. It wasn't mine. It was hers. Images filled my mind, not clear but strong. A girl locked away, crying in the dark, calling for someone who never came. Time passed. Seasons changed. But the door stayed shut. They had forgotten her. Maybe on purpose. Maybe out of fear. She hadn't run away. She had been left behind. That night, I returned to the shack with flowers and whispered words. "I see you now. I know what they did. I won't let them pretend you never existed." A breeze passed through, soft and warm, and for the first time I felt like she was listening. Really listening. Then, everything changed. The dreams grew darker. I saw shadows twisting in corners. I heard crying behind walls. I started waking with bruises on my arms and neck, though I didn't remember being hurt. I tried to tell Uncle Chu, but he just looked away. "You're in too deep," he said. "The more you give her, the more she'll take." "I'm not afraid," I told him, but I was. I was afraid of what I was becoming. One night, I heard a voice outside my window. It was Cal. "Lena," he said, barely a whisper. "I'm cold." I ran outside, barefoot, heart racing. There he was, standing near the trees, his little body still and pale. "Cal!" I shouted, rushing forward. But when I reached him, he vanished, swallowed by the trees like a drop in a dark river, and behind him stood her. My. Only this time, her face wasn't sad. It was angry. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my bed, clutching the blanket tight around my shoulders, watching the window like something might crawl through at any second. Every creak in the wood, every groan of wind outside sent my heart racing. Was Cal really there? Was it a trick? Mai had shown herself so many times, sad, desperate, lonely. But now something had changed. The sorrow in her eyes had turned into something sharper, hungrier, and she had taken my brother, and I had to go back. The next day I returned to the forest one last time. This time I wasn't scared. I was angry. I walked straight to the old shack where I found her name carved in the walls. The place felt heavier now, darker. I didn't need light to see. I knew she would be there, and she was, waiting. She didn't float or flicker like a ghost. She stood there like she belonged, like the woods were hers. "You lied to me," I said, my voice trembling. "You said you wanted peace. You said you were lost." "I was," she said, voice like ice, "until you remembered me." Her eyes glowed faintly in the dark. "I needed someone to carry the pain. You opened the door." I stepped forward. "Where is my brother?" She smiled faintly. "He's with me now." Like I was forgotten, buried. "No," I shouted. "You can't keep him." She moved closer. I felt the air go still. "They didn't believe me either," she said. "They turned their backs. My cries were ignored. My life was nothing to them. I begged for love. I begged to be seen." "And now you're hurting children?" I said, tears rising. "You became what they were. Cruel." Her expression didn't change. "I was a shadow long before I died, and now I will never be alone again." I ran. I don't remember how far or how fast. My lungs burned. My feet bled. But I didn't stop until I burst into Uncle Chu's house, gasping. "She took him!" I cried. "She wants to keep him like they kept her." He didn't say anything for a long time. Then finally, he got up and handed me a box wrapped in cloth. Inside was a small photo, stained and faded. A girl, smiling faintly, eyes like mine. "This was your aunt," he said quietly. "My." I froze. "She was my sister," he continued. "They locked her away when she started speaking to things no one else could see. They said she was cursed. Our family, we let her fade." My head spun. "She's family?" "She was," he said, voice trembling, "and her pain stayed. It found you because you listened. That night, I returned again, not to fight, but to speak. I walked into the forest with the photo in a mirror from my room. I found the clearing where I last seen her and waited. When she appeared, I didn't run. "I know who you are now," I whispered. "You were never a monster. You were just broken." I held up the mirror. "Look." She hesitated, then stepped closer. When she saw herself, something shifted. Her eyes widened. Her reflection flickered. Not a ghost, but a girl. A human girl. Afraid and alone. "I remember this face," she said softly. She looked at me, truly looked. I didn't want to become this, she whispered. I know. And then she began to fade. But this time, not like smoke, not like a threat, like a memory, finally letting go. Kyle returned 2 days later. He was cold, confused, but unharmed. He didn't remember much, only that he followed someone who looked like me into the woods. And then there was a voice that told him to go home. I knew who it was. She wasn't just a shadow. She was a girl who had been left behind and who finally found someone to listen. It's been 10 years since the night I faced her, since the forest swallowed her story, and then slowly let it go. Sometimes I still dream of Mai. I see her as a girl, sitting beneath a tree, sunlight warming her face. She's humming a song I don't know, and when she looks at me, there's peace in her eyes. I think that's all she ever wanted. Not revenge, not fear, just peace. Kyle doesn't remember much of what happened. He's older now, and when I ask him, he just shrugs like it was a strange dream he forgot. But sometimes, when he walks by the edge of the woods, I notice the way he slows down. Like part of him still feels her watching. Not in a threatening way, more like she's guarding something. Maybe she's watching over all of us. A reminder of what happens when silence grows louder than truth. I moved away years ago, but I visit sometimes. The forest is quieter now, still, but not heavy. The old shack behind the rice mill was torn down. In its place, we built a small stone bench and planted flowers around it. No name, no sign. Just a quiet space for anyone who feels forgotten. I go there when I need to remember who I am. Not just Lena, the girl who saw ghosts, but Lena, the girl who listened. People still tell stories of haunted places, shadow women, things in the trees. Some say it's just fear. Others say it's old spirits. I know the truth is more complicated. Sometimes a spirit isn't here to hurt us. Sometimes it's just trying to speak, to tell the story no one else would. And sometimes the only way to set them free is to listen. Story 4. Whispers in Clearwater. My name is Leah. I was 19 when my parents bought a small house in Clearwater, not too far from the beach, tucked behind a row of weather-worn pines and palms. The house looked normal from the outside, if not a little tired. Paint peeling in places, porch sagging, but the price was low and we were excited to leave Minnesota behind. It didn't feel strange at first, just quiet, but I should have listened to the quiet. My room faced the backyard, where wild grass grew tall and uneven. There was a canal back there, the water dark and still, barely moving. I remember the first night clearly. I couldn't sleep. Not because of noise, but because of how silent it was. No bugs, no frogs, no wind, just silence. Thick, pressing silence. And something else, a tapping. From the wall behind my bed. At first I thought it was pipes. Florida houses were old. Maybe it was just settling. But it wasn't pipes. It wasn't in the walls. It was from inside the room. I saw her for the first time 2 weeks after we moved in. It had rained the night before, and the canal had overflowed slightly, soaking the yard. I went out to check on our dog, Nala, who'd been barking all morning. She refused to go near the back fence. That's when I saw her, standing ankle deep in the water. A girl, long hair covering her face, her dress soaked and clinging to her like it was part of her skin. I blinked. She was gone. No splash, no ripple, just gone. I didn't tell anyone. Not until my younger brother too started sleepwalking. He was only 12 and quiet. He never sleepwalked before, but suddenly every other night we find him outside, walking slowly toward the canal. His eyes were open but vacant. When we finally stopped him at the edge of the water, I asked him why he kept going out there. "She calls me," he said. "Who?" "The girl. She's cold. She says she's still down there." I felt a chill run through me. We tried everything to stop it. Locking the doors, putting bells on his bedroom knob. Nothing worked. One night, I decided to stay awake and follow him. At exactly 2:13 a.m., he got up, walked down the hall, and out the back door like it wasn't even locked. I followed him barefoot into the wet grass. He walked all the way to the canal, and then he spoke. "She says you know," he whispered, in a voice that wasn't his. "You saw her too." I grabbed him and shook him. "Who is she?" He looked at me, eyes wide and wet. "She said your face looks like hers." I went back inside and dug through the drawers where the real estate agent had left old papers. There was nothing at first, just closing docs and boring property records. But then I found it. A water damage police report from 10 years ago. A girl named Alina, age 17, drowned in the canal behind the house. Body recovered after 2 days. Family had moved away shortly after. Cause of death unknown. No signs of struggle. But the last sentence stuck with me. Witness reports girl standing in water. Night after recovery. She'd been seen after death. And now she was back. I tried to ignore her. I tried to tell myself I was imagining it. But then things got worse. My reflection began changing. Not in a big horror movie way. Just little things. A twitch in the smile. A delay in the blink. I would look away and look back. And my reflection would still be staring. She was inside me. Or trying to be. It happened during a thunderstorm. 2 was asleep. My parents were out working late. I was in my room, staring at the rain sliding down the window. Then I heard a splash. A soft one. Like someone stepping into shallow water. I turned slowly. She was standing in my room. Wet. Hair hanging like seaweed. Skin pale and cracked. She opened her mouth and water poured out. Not words. Water. She whispered, "You are me now." Then everything went black. I woke up face down on the floor. The room smelled like pond water. My clothes were soaked. My skin was ice cold. I didn't know what had happened, but I knew one thing. I had to finish this. I walked out to the canal one last time. The water was calm, still, but I knew she was there, just beneath the surface. "I'm not yours," I said, "and I won't let you take anyone else." The water rippled. A hand broke the surface. Thin, gray, bone showing through skin. I stepped back. "I see you," I said. That's all it took. She sank slowly, like someone finally letting go. We moved a month later. My parents said the commute was too far, but I knew the real reason. They had started hearing the whispers too. 2 hasn't sleepwalked since. The house is still there. Empty now. Grass tall. Canal quiet. But sometimes I wonder if someone else will move in. If she'll wait again. Watching. Calling. For another girl who looks just enough like her to take her place.